All right, Tuesday, here we go. Hi there, and welcome to This Day in History for September 10th. September 10th is the 253rd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 254th in leap years, with 112 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is assignation. Assignation is a noun, and there are several definitions for this word. Some of those definitions no longer in use. For example, the word assignation used to mean an authoritative order, like issuing an assignment. That definition is no longer in use, though. Another archaic definition for the word assignation was the assignment of funds, like an allowance, a sum of money assigned to someone for a specific purpose, or even a piece of paper currency. Those definitions are also no longer in use. A definition of the word assignation might be the making over by transfer of title, like assigning your car to a buyer, or an assigning by allotment, apportionment. Sometimes the word assignation might be used in attribution, like a quote from the Saturday Review where they mentioned the assignation of Mark Twain to the quote, "Everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it." The most used or referenced definition for the word assignation these days, though, is that of an appointment of time or place for a meeting, especially for illicit lovers. Don't be trying to call an informal business meeting an assignation. In the current time, an assignation is thought of as an appointment to meet someone in secret, usually made by lovers, or for a love affair, so be careful how you use this word. The word assignation comes to us through French, Latin before that. First known use of the word assignation is in the 1300s, assignation. Today's word assignation was suggested by a YouTube viewer at DJ Alexer. Thanks, DJ. And if you have a word you'd like to see in this Word of the Day segment, drop it in the comments. We'll take a look at it. And with that, this is the birthday of English physician Thomas Sydenham, born September 10th, 1624. Known as the English Hippocrates, he wrote a medical book that became the standard textbook of medicine for 2 centuries. He also discovered a disease known as Sydenham's chorea, also known as St. Vitus dance, which was later discovered to be a neurological after effect of scarlet fever, which is caused by a strep infection. Sydenham's chorea is rarely seen these days because children are usually treated with antibiotics before strep throat can turn into scarlet fever, before it turns into Sydenham's chorea. Thomas Sydenham, good guy. He lived to the age of 65. This is the birthday of Isaac Funk, born September 10th, 1839. He was the co-founder of Funk and Wagnall's publishing company. They typically publish reference works such as the Standard Dictionary of the English Language and the Funk and Wagnall Standard Encyclopedia in 25 volumes. That's what we used to use before the internet, before we had Wikipedia. You had all these collections of books, encyclopedias, and you could certainly find them in the library. But if a family was fortunate enough to have a set of encyclopedias in the home, they might just sit down and pull one out and read out of one of those volumes for the evening. That's something we did before the internet. Mr. Funk lived to the age of 72. Now, we've mentioned Elias Howe before. He was granted a patent for the sewing machine on September 10th, 1846. We're talking about the modern lock-stitch sewing machine. A lot of people have in their homes right now under different brands. And what a great thing that was. Before sewing machines, the lady of the house was likely to spend several days each month mending clothes. Even if she could afford to hire a seamstress, it was still a huge time-consuming task keeping the household's clothing in good repair. And you might think, as I did at first, well, gee, what was wrong with their clothes that they needed so much mending? I would answer that question with a question. Have you ever hand sewn anything? If so, you know how fragile those seams might be. One little piece of thread going back and forth through the fabric to hold it together. Hand stitching is a lovely accent to garments nowadays, but if the entire garment is held together with nothing but hand stitching, it's probably going to need quite a bit of maintenance. The lock stitch sewing machine changed that in a big way. The seams on your clothing now, whether it was a commercially made product or your mom or yourself made it, those seams stay together a lot better when they're sewn on the sewing machine than if they were sewn by hand. And we could thank Elias Howe for that. And this is the day he received the patent for the lock stitch sewing machine. This is the birthday of musician Joe Perry. Born Joseph Anthony Perriera on September 10, 1950 in Lawrence, Massachusetts, he grew up loving the ocean. And inspired by Jacques Cousteau, Joe wanted first to be a marine biologist. But he struggled in school due to what we now recognize as ADHD, a thing unheard of when he was young. He discovered the music of the day, the Beatles, the Who, the Kinks, the Yardbirds, and his dream changed from wanting to be a marine biologist to being in a band like the Yardbirds. He formed the band that would become Aerosmith in the 1960s. In addition to Aerosmith, Joe Perry does some work with his group Joe Perry Project and a group called Hollywood Vampires. Other members of Hollywood Vampires, by the way, are Alice Cooper, Johnny Depp, and Tommy Henriksen. Joe Perry turns 74 in 2024. Now we have a playlist of episodes for this day in history, as well as a playlist of single subjects called How About That? And a playlist of words of the day called There's a Word for That, and I'll leave links to those playlists for you. Today's song is Back in the Saddle by Aerosmith. Written by Steven Tyler and Joe Perry, this song appears on Aerosmith's 1976 album Rocks and was released as a single in March of 1977. Back in the Saddle peaked at 38 on the Billboard Hot 100 and has come to be one of Aerosmith's notable songs. It's been covered by other artists and has been featured in popular culture and other media. Back in the Saddle by Aerosmith. Link in the description. It's funny, in researching today's material, I came across a note that said in the early days of Aerosmith, the band was dismissed as just being a Rolling Stone knockoff band. They kept on doing their thing, though, and I don't think anyone would accuse them of that today. Totally different groups, styles, and delivery. What do you think? Let's check the pronunciation on that right quick.
Assignation.
That's what I thought. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with the link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That description lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Alrighty, back to work. I think we got it this time.